Goldstone and Michael Stearns from New Nature Foundation, which are presenting a very interesting topic. Another one with social science is important, that we that start conservation projects, our main goal in a sense should be to see the local communities appropriate the programs, because we will not be here all the time. So let's see what are their solutions for that. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Eric. Thanks to the organizers for including us. We are very, very excited to be here. It's been since 2016 since we've been at an EAZA conference, so it's nice to be the American representatives here with everybody today. Beauval Zoo was a great supporter of this work for several years. We also had Chester Zoo, another EAZA partner, for several years. In fact, over 30 AZA, EAZA, and WAZA organizations have supported the work over the years. I have to say right now we don't have any EAZA partners. That's when everybody's supposed to gasp. And so hopefully this gets some folks excited, and we can garner some more support through this program. I myself, I work at the Philadelphia Zoo. I'm the curator for primates and small mammals, and they're a large supporter of this work as well. And it's nice to be in this group and on today's program as well, because a lot of what we've been hearing about so far at the 30,000 foot level, we're going to drill down now and show you how New Nature Foundation is doing this stuff on the ground. So we're going to be talking about a couple of our projects in Uganda, the Kibale Fuelwood Project, which has been ongoing since 2006, and then the EcoChar Initiative, which is since 2011. We're not going to be able to get into the new one, the Kasenyi Conservation Project, yet today, but that's just kind of replicating some of those programs in a different habitat, in a savanna habitat just to the south of where we've been working for most of the time. And then the Vietnamese program, the Khao Ka Forest Conservation Project since 2014, that's where some of the projects were replicated in Vietnam. And so we're going to talk about each of those. The Tonkin snub-nosed monkey, which it was really nice to see that Zoostrava is supporting TSNM conservation. That's our flagship animal for the Vietnamese work. And then the chimpanzee, of course, is the flagship for the Ugandan work. But it's important to remember that these are both habitat protection programs. And so many, many species that are kept in EAZA zoos can be found, especially in the areas we work in Uganda. So many of the animals that we'll see on Zoo Day tomorrow, or that we've seen at some of the other zoos around Europe, can be helped with these programs. And as I said, these are habitat-centered programs, okay? We're looking to preserve the forest specifically for the animals that live there, and now the grasslands as well in Queen Elizabeth. The Tonkin snub-nosed monkey, I should point out, the last viable population of this species is in Khao Ka Forest, where we've been working. And then on the left is the Ugandan red colobus, also known as the ashy red colobus. The last viable population of this species is in Kibale. Neither of these species are held under human care anywhere in the world, ever. So the only way you're going to save these species is by saving this forest. And of course, as we've been talking about, and as social science would indicate, the future of that forest is based on the future of the people around that forest. And the reason a small organization like New Nature can have the success we've had in these areas is that the threat to the forest is very specific. The threat in these areas, the number one threat, is small-scale logging for firewood, for cooking fuel. So you can see here, this is a picture of Kibale on Google Maps. That shape is the outline of the park. The dark green is forest, the lighter green is the surrounding farms. And this has not been done by, industry or mining or something like that. This is just individual people getting what they need to cook their dinners. It's the same thing in Vietnam. The darker green is the forest, the lighter green are the areas that have been cut down. And, in most of the areas we work, this is illegal, but the guards turn a blind eye to it because, again, it's not somebody getting rich off of it, it's just individual people trying to feed their families. And so that makes it a program that, or a problem that a small group like New Nature can actually solve. All of our work is very multifaceted. Of course, you have to hit this problem of habitat protection from multiple different angles. And for the Ugandan program, we're going to talk about one aspect of this that has now transitioned to local leadership. For the Vietnamese program, we're going to talk about how the bulk of the program has now transitioned to local leadership. So starting off in Uganda with the Kibale EcoChar Initiative, This has been ongoing since 2011, and we're actually producing cooking fuel. So, we can't get into a lot of the details of the project, but on the left you see something that we call EcoChar. This burns just like charcoal, and it's made from industrial waste. And on the right you see something that we call a kachum brick. This is a non-carbonized briquette. It burns like firewood, and it's the portion of the program that we have now transitioned to local leadership. Basically, you can briquette any type of biomass and turn it into cooking fuel. It's a process that was invented back in the 60s, actually well before that. Henry Ford invented this process when he made the Model T, because he had so much extra sawdust. That's when briquetting was invented. So we're basically just looking at what ingredients are available in the areas we're working and turning them into cooking fuel. At first, we thought that we could just teach folks this and everyone would be able to make their own cooking fuel in their own backyards and solve all the problems and everything would be great. Little do we know, it is very, very labor intensive, very, very time intensive. So here you can see some of the steps in the process. Those are the different ingredients. You mix them together in the right proportions. You put it in a mold, put it under a double lever, a compound press, squeeze all the water out to compress it there. Removing the briquette from the mold can be very difficult, and then of course putting it in the tent to dry, and that can often take a couple of weeks in rainy season especially before you have something that can actually be used as cooking fuel. So very quickly we realized this is not something that the majority of folks will have time to do, and so we switched to a model of barter, of trade. People can bring us their farm waste, things like banana peels, peanut shells, avocado pits, things that aren't being used for anything else on the farm, and bring them to our production center and walk away with an amount of briquettes with them. And this model worked very, very well. People like the briquettes. They cook, and you don't need to walk into the forest to cut down trees and collect firewood, so it's much safer, especially in rainy season when things are taking a long, long time to dry. People really prefer these briquettes, so the model was working. The issue we ran into is that at the same time as we've been continuing this non-carbonized briquette, we started the carbonized briquettes. The ones that burn like charcoal we're actually selling, because people who cook with charcoal are used to paying for fuel, and those are the folks who can afford paying for fuel. So the need for those is sky high. Our production of them has been increasing exponentially, whereas the non-carbonized briquettes kind of plateaued. The distance that people are willing to walk to trade their waste is a finite distance. So we kind of grew, and then stopped growing and plateaued for several years. And at the same time, the carbonized briquettes are getting more and more popular. And so a couple of years ago, we realized we're going to have to reassign some of the staff. We're going to have to take the staff from the non-carbonized briquettes and move them to the carbonized briquettes. And that gave us a great opportunity.
That's right, Michael.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Laura. So we knew that this transition was going to be difficult. A lot of the communities that we work with have dealt with a lot of kind of donor abandonment, and the idea that someone comes and is very well-wishing and does one thing and then never comes back. And so we took about a year whispering that we were going to slowly move towards the EcoChar and why. And women kept coming up to us and saying, please don't get rid of this project, this is really beneficial. And so we said, well, what if we gave you the materials? We gave you everything we couldn't pay you, but you could take it over. And June of 2023, 34 women formed a cooperative to run this project on their own. They don't get paid, they've created their own working schedule. And this is women who most likely have, on average, 6 children. They've probably got somebody else in the back of the house who's pretty sick. They've got a farm to take care of. This is a very, very labor-intensive lifestyle, and yet they still choose to come to work together, tear paper up, gather sawdust from who knows where, get water from the well, mix it all together, put it in a lever press, birth it out like you have to do, and all of this work because there's a benefit to them. And because there was a trust and relationship established from 2011 to date that said that we are responding to what you want and you're responding to what we are looking for, and you feel like this is your project. It's no longer ours. So they took it over, and you can see the women, this is from last month or 2 months ago. There's an abundance of the bricks, they're very happy. And every once in a while they'll report to me about what they need or how things are going. But so here we're talking about transition. And I'll say that the reason we're doing that here is that in a lot of the American zoos that we partner with, transition has become a very trendy phrase. And maybe it's not as trendy here yet. But the idea of local empowerment and local transition has been something that we've felt pressure from our donors to start emphasizing more. So that's why we're here today to share how do we find a balance between this fantastic partnership and how do you transition? We made an acronym and we call it TRUST. And I've heard the word trust a lot today, and trust is pretty deep and there's a lot to it. So what do I mean by that? Tutelage, I mean this, and I mean every aspect is not us to one partner to another, it's all partners working together. So we did the lit reviews and we read the research about the fuel wood crisis in 2004 and 2005 in Uganda, and we read where fuel efficient stoves were working and where biomass was working, but we certainly weren't going to come into an area and just share that information. We had to learn, they had to teach us how they were cooking. They had to teach us about how you mix millet so that you know that if the stove will work for that. We had to see what kitchens look like. They had to teach us about rainy season versus dry season, materials that would be available versus what somebody might end up wanting to sell. Somebody might want to feed to their pigs or use as mulch in livestock. And again, to speak to our zoos and our aquarium supporters, the changes in conservation strategies, in master plans, in the species collections and the priorities, all of this is kind of a partnership of all of us sharing knowledge in a really beneficial way. Realism, again, like I said, we came with the idea of what we thought would work, but we needed to learn from the people what really would work. So what would be sustainable, affordable, practical, utilitarian, right? So you'll see in the future stoves how we design things that are replicable, you don't need any money to make, are using locally sourced materials, and are something that a community has proven to adapt before you decide to go anywhere further than that. Understanding is really key, and a lot of people here, you can just compare, we all got our special intricacies, whether it's a type of bird or a human being. We work in Uganda, we work with Batoro, we work with Bachiga, we work with the Yankole tribes. Every single one has different knowledge, different ceremonies, customs, beliefs. In Vietnam, we work with the Thai, the Zhao, and the Hmong. We have to understand and respect all of that before we even think that we have the right to come into an area and make any kind of suggestion about what we're going to do and how we're going to work together, right? We're not going to walk into a place and say, save that chimp, look at how cool it is, when you can't cook your food for dinner and your children can't. These are really important things. Symbiosis, we want this to be mutually beneficial for all parties. For us, we're coming from the sense that we really want to have a strong conservation impact. For the people that we work with, they are looking for an improvement in their daily lives, something that's making life more efficient, better, easier, healthier. From our partners and our donors, they're looking for also conservation impact. They're looking for, are we having a result? Where is our money going? Are we helping to save this species? What are we actually affecting deforestation? And that goes to the last talk about reporting and transparency. You have to be constantly reminding the people that you work with, this is a scientific study as well as a social science. You do have to collect the information in order to make sure that everybody is seeing the impact. For those of us who maybe can't walk in the village every day and witness it for ourselves. And time, I spent a lot of time on this slide, so if that gives you an idea. We've been working there since 2005. It is our home. Learning the language, learning the culture, learning the way that you can cook a different meal for a different wedding, or a different material then becomes unavailable, or a different type of wood is no longer available for charcoal because it's been oversold. This is all about time and understanding. So welcome to, as they say in Uganda, mpora mpora. For Swahili, we say pole pole. Just take it easy, folks. Sit back and relax. So how did we gain that trust? And all of the things that are included in trust, we started with the stoves. So we told you that we have read the reviews, we know that there's a fuel wood crisis, but then we just walked around and we sat with people and we watched people cook and we watched girls go into the national park to get firewood. We looked at the way people are traditionally cooking, and then we started to introduce this idea. The stoves in Uganda are made from mud, dung, ash, things that you can get and make without having any money at all. If you want a fancy stove, you can get some bricks. It'll cost maybe $1 or $2. And they work for all types of foods, and that's really important. They actually modernize a kitchen. You're no longer cooking outside. You have a healthier smoke, as a more efficient smoke is actually burning healthier smoke, less burns for children, all of the things that help gain trust with the communities that you work in, because you've identified their needs first, before the conservation needs, to be quite honest. You know, he's a primatologist, but I don't know when the last time was I brought him into the forest, because we're constantly out with the people eating a whole bunch of food at this point. And then it was, you know, this is another idea of tutelage. We wanted, you know, everyone says sensitization and teaching people, so we opened 5 natural history museums, and they have just been, it's been an explosion of knowledge and creativity, where we have, these are mud rooms and training centers in the middle of nowhere, and they have been one of the most successful and adapted and loved pieces. And the other piece in terms of transition is we learned by working with our staff year after year that there's a lot of teachers in there, and they really love to teach. So that's why the science centers work so well, because the people, we've helped identify a skill that nobody ever gave them the chance to kind of share before. And earlier today, I think there was a slide. It doesn't have to be complicated, just creative. I think that was Ostrava who did that slide. This is an example. This was our mud hut, and people began to decorate the outside with recycled murals. They used African hair once they were done with it to make the hair of a chimpanzee. You know, there's tires and all kinds of stuff. All of this was done locally, and this is just one of the 5 museums. So every opportunity and the time that people finally felt that they trust enough in us and our project to share and to give themselves a chance to kind of explore being conservationists on their own terms. It takes a long time, but it's been a very, very successful way of really making what I think is a really positive difference. And in Vietnam, a similar thing. I didn't even know this, but for the first 3 years, everybody thought I was a witch. And apparently the fact that I just kept coming back and sitting with people and getting drunk time after time after time in forests, everyone's like, oh, all right, we like her now. And you could tell, because they would finally smile, but yeah. So again, joy, smiling, finding good ways. And then I talked about the tribes, and I talked about traditional knowledge and culture. We want to embrace the clans and the totems and the traditional knowledge that exists within all of these areas and have just been washed away in more recent history. So dancing and drumming is very, very important. And so we say, add conservation to your message. Remove ourselves from the picture and have you teach your neighbors and your cousins and your whomever about the story. So we've kind of exploded these international conservation days into not just dancing and singing about whatever the topic is, but also we have fuel-efficient bean cook-offs. So we have 20 cooks at each location who own their own stove, that make their own stoves. They come with their beans. We have judges, a panel of judges taste a ridiculous amount of beans. We have a whole bean party. Everybody can have beans. It's a lot of beans, I guess, where I'm going with that. It's evolved into a recycled fashion show as well, where there's a bottle caps made into a gorgeous necklace. We've got rice bags, we've got trash bags, and all of this was just like, hey guys, do you think maybe we want to try like a fashion show this year? And like the modeling and the DJing and the stuff that came out, because the trust was there, because the relationship was there, the respect was there, and it was all done without. We're no longer pushing we don't have to push conservation. Conservation is clearly just ingrained into everything that is a part of what New Nature does. So we're very, very proud of it, as you can tell. And this is just a few references of, again, this is time. So Margaret is our project manager. She's the first person we ever met in Uganda in the year 2000, and that's her mother. And they're a family, and we don't just sit around talking about the issues. We also sit around and she teaches me how to mend her husband's socks in Vietnam, or again, the drinking with Vietnam. We sit around, maybe have a cup of tea, but we have to take the time. And you guys are doing wonderful work in the zoos and don't have as much time as I do, because this is my full-time job. But you can identify that this is a need and a really important part of conservation today. Here's more, we're just having a lot of fun, right? Drumming, and we had him put a cup on his head and see if he could get up, if his stomach muscles were strong enough. We do all kinds of competitions and games and really try to stop that old message of this having to be such a serious and horrible thing and all the things that are going wrong, instead of finding a way to find a positive spin on changing what's going wrong. Sound good, Michael? Hey.
So, how do we transition some of the other aspects of the work in Vietnam? In the center there, that's Lưu Thang Beck. He is the manager of our stove program since it started in 2014. And we actually thought it was just going to be a one-year partnership to start, that we were invited out by another NGO to teach how to make stoves. That one-year partnership turned into 10 years, but from the beginning we knew we weren't going to be there forever. So we began working with Beck to be able to take over the program from the start. We make two types of stoves in Vietnam. The one on the left is smaller, it's for cooking for your family, and on the right is larger, that's for cooking for livestock or brewing moonshine. And basically it's the same thing. They had been cooking on open fires, and people were ready for a change. They were ready for something that would save them time, effort, and firewood. And again, it's a healthier stove. Becca was saying it burns just a touch hotter than an open fire, and that burns a lot of the particulate matter out of the smoke. So if you're cooking on a fire every day, to have less particulate matter in the smoke from that fire, that is very, very useful. So again, people are proud of their stoves. They built them themselves. They love them. They use them. And just like in Uganda, we integrated the conservation competitions, a way for people to use their own culture to teach their friends and neighbors about conservation. And again, they love it. And the audiences love it. We've got over 1,000 people coming to each of these now, at 2 different sites in Vietnam and 5 different sites, 6 different sites now in Uganda, and it's great. There's the recycled fashion in Vietnam. This is an obstacle course that shows how much easier life is if you use an efficient stove, because you can carry a smaller pile of wood. The Vietnamese program also involves partnering with local governmental officials on things like wild animal confiscations and relocations. Education courses, bringing students into the forest, and then up top there is a virtual conservation celebration. We started that during the pandemic, but actually have continued it because it gets a completely different audience than the live conservation competitions do. So all of this has been growing together. Cameras, we've seen a lot of camera shots today. We did not originally include this in the design, but like Becca said, we seldom get into the forest. For Beck, as the manager of this program, he needed some way to connect with the forest. He is a primatologist as well. He didn't want to be in the village full time, and so we integrated camera traps into the work just to get a little bit more information about what's going on in there. And we've seen some amazing things. We think that is the only ever photo taken of a Tonkin snub-nosed monkey terrestrial. They tend to be way up in the trees. And then that's the only other primate around in the area, macaque. Not much wildlife left in that forest. The tigers have been hunted out, the bears are gone, the cloud leopards are gone, and so the last remaining wildlife in there, just protecting that habitat for them so they can remain, and then potentially in the future reintroduce all those other species. But again, working from the beginning, you can tell from my hairline in each photo and Beck's hairline, at the beginning there we are developing the first stove in Vietnam together. We knew the concept of the rocket stove from the internet. We knew what had worked for us in Uganda, but we had no idea what would work in Vietnam, what would be acceptable by the culture there, what would cook their foods there. So working like from the ground up, how are we going to build this thing? And realizing cement was the way to go, not those bricks. Working together on things like grant applications and helping him gain these skills, and at the same time him teaching us what folks that he meets in the government find important. He found a donor who has now funded all of 2024 for certain portions of that project there. So that is a very exciting thing that we've been able to work on together. There's Rebecca leading a workshop together with Quinn, who runs other aspects of the program. And this is all to say that transition to local leadership is a great goal, but it should never be an exit strategy. It should be a way to deepen the connections, to make the program better, and to go on to bigger and better things. There is plenty of habitat that still needs protection in the areas we're working. There's a lot of stuff. Actually, we shared a video on the WOVA app that goes into more detail about a lot of what we do. But what we have planned for this coming year isn't in the video. It's super exciting, so please ask us about it, because there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And again, remember, lots and lots of animals that share your all species plans as well.
And they say it's Vietnamazing, but let me tell you, Uganda, be kidding me. The animals in Uganda are amazing. Thank you.
We got like 4 laughs.
I practiced that like 3 times with my friend.
So thank you so much for
Wow, very impressive. I knew it already, by the way. Do we have time for a couple of questions? Anybody has a question? Or you are all tired now? Oh, thank you very much. It was really nice.